Good morning. Good morning. I'm Jane Wright from Des Moines, Iowa, and this morning we're painting these little children playing in the rain. And so we're going to start with doing we're going to do the background first. I created this piece to do in workshop so that we could get it all done in one fire. But if you're curious, I usually go back and add some detailing on the second fire. And if you are curious and you want to paint this at home, send me an email and I'll send you the instructions on how to finish, add some more depth and detail. That usually put that in on second fire. We'll put some in today, but it'll need just a few touching up. So we're going to start out by creating this cast shadow down here at the bottom. And we're going to put this in with a water-based medium. And the reason I do that is because it dries very quickly and I can paint over it with my oil paints. Then after we do the water base, we're going to do the background, which you can see back here. The water base will be laid in with using synthetic brush that has not been used with oil. If you have any oil on your piece, that water base will dissipate from there and start pulling away. So you want to make sure that your piece does not have any oil on it or your brush does not have any oil on it. And the on the water base, I've mixed up blue, red, and yellow. And then I'm going to mix up some paint here and so this is the reflection of the children. And this is just a mixture that I made up. It's got syrup in it and 7-Up and some wine. You can play around with it. You can actually use just plain 7-Up when you're doing water-based. There's a lot of different water-based products out there. This dries very hard. I mixed these paints up last night. The good thing about water-based is that it dries very quickly and you can paint over it with oil paints. It does not collect any lint because there's no oil in it. So that's the great thing about it. You can take this palette and reuse it for months, years. It goes a long distance. Whatever you're painting, it comes out exactly the color you see. And it is more intense than if you're using oils because it doesn't burn off. There's nothing to burn off. So once you've mixed this up, you can see I've mixed it fairly loose. It's very sticky because it has lots of sugar in it. So you can't use diet pop or if you have to use something with sugar in it. And I'm using this synthetic brush, as you can see, and I am going, the medium that I'm using is water. And so I just have a cup of water sitting here and I just dip it in and I'm going to start with the reflection in the water. And when I paint this in, I've resisted the children because we're going to come in and do this background. And if you don't do it, you have to clean it all up. So I'm going to start with painting the reflection of the boots on both the kids and then their coats. Now, the other thing about water-based medium is that it is very brittle. And you see by that one stroke that I made right here, it's very intense. Now here, do you see there's a little bit of oil in that one corner? See how that's trying to pull apart there? So that's what it will do. And if that happens when you're painting, it's going to work really well if you have some on this piece because it gives you more texture for the water reflection. But if it happens on a piece that you're working with at home, just keep working it a little bit and that'll dissipate that. But what you want to remember is when you're working with a water-based medium, it is going to be very intense. So that color is not going to fade out. So if you want it thinner, you're just going to have to keep moving it and going thinner, and it'll be not as intense. The other part of that, you see, this is already drying up, is do you see how heavy this piece is right in through here? If I were to fire this would all chip off because it's so heavy. The thing about working with water-based medium, you have to paint very thin. If you have a buildup, it's whatever you put over that is going to chip. So I don't use it a lot, only for just this type of things. A lot of artists will use it, but I don't like using it for, do you see it's probably got a little bit of oil from the graphite, because your graphite has some, now do you see it's already drying and it's kind of streaky. And that's okay for this reflection, but this will do this when you're painting on any other subject at home. So if that does that, go back into your water and just blend it a little bit. And again, you want it to be impressionistic down here. You're not painting an exact duplicate of the subject that you're painting. You want it to be muted. Now, do you see how I've got too much there? I'm just using this little wipeout tool and some spit to clean that up. So I'm putting the red in, and as you can see, it's fairly thin. I've resisted the reflection. Do you see the reflection of the boot in the water? I've resisted that also because we want to paint over this and otherwise it would show. So I've got the red in. Now I'm going to work on her coat. And then I'll go on to the little boy or the little girl. This is the little boy. And with the yellow. So it's kind of streaky, and that's okay. We want it to be that. When you're working at home, you'll want to put away all your oil products while you're doing water-based, because what will happen is you'll end up getting into that oil-based product. And then you've messed your whole piece up and you've got to start again. So I don't usually have them all out at the same time, including my medium. I'll cover it because I'm going to have a tendency to want to dip into it with my brush instead of my water base. So now I'm going to come and start there's a little reflection of his pants right here. So I'm getting into the blue. And again, you can save your water base paints, and it moves, so I can kind of blend these colors together. Again, I'm using water as my medium. And get the coat in there. As I've got blue in my brush, I'm going to go over to the little girl and do her boots. Her boots are dark blue, and when I start using my oils, I'm going to use a couple colors of blue for that. Okay, so now I'm done with the blue, and now I'm going to work on the yellow. She also has a little bit of yellow on her, so I'm going to put a little bit of yellow up in here. I use yellow brown because a lot of the yellows are cannibalistic. Some of them are not cannibalistic, but they are intense. And what I'm saying by that is their pigment is so strong, it doesn't eat the color, it overpowers it. I use a lot of lemon yellow, and when you're using it is not cannibalistic. It is a very dominant color. However, it will overpower. I'm going to bring this up a little closer so you can see it will overpower any color. So I never use lemon yellow except for on the last fire. So if I'm painting anything yellow, whether it's roses or fruit or whatever, I'm using yellow brown as my color. And then the last fire, I will come back and wash everything with lemon yellow. If you put lemon yellow on first, you're going to, it's not going to hold any color from that point on. It's going to overpower all your colors. So, all right, now I'm going to get into her coat and I'm using some pink here. Again, whatever you see is what is going to be here. And do you see how that's pulling away there? There's some oil there. That's okay because we're using a reflection in the water and we want that texture as it kind of pools. However, if you're painting something you don't want that, you're going to want to come back and clean that up. So what you will do is go and wash your piece with a little bit of water. And the reason you use water is because alcohol has oil in it. And I'm going to show that to you here in a few minutes when we do some spritzing on here. And that will still leave a residue. Now, I want to kind of blend. You see how these two are kind of blurred? They're too much of a separation. So we're going to take a little bit of that yellow and a little bit of that pink, mix it together on my brush and kind of blur those two colors together so they kind of overlap. All right, that's going to dry very quickly. And now we're going to work and we're going to put this away. This is our water base. You're going to put it away because if you don't, you're going to get into it and you're going to start painting with oils in this, and then you're going to not like it. So I'm putting that away and getting out my oils. And again, what I'm using for my background, did I show you? Yeah, here's the water base that I'm using. If anybody wants them, just send me an email. So now I'm going to use another product for the background. We're going to put this gray in. I'm using my large sharp brush. This is probably 30 years old. And we're going to paint this all in because this has all been resisted. And that I have taken dry paint, which the water base, again, I want to remind you all that that was mixed with dry paint, not with paint off of your palette, because again, that has oil in it. So the medium I'm going to use now for my piece is turpentine. And I know a lot of people don't like turpentine. I'm here to tell you that it is the only product that works this way. It dries very quickly, it pools, it creates texture, and none of the other products, whether it's Turpenoid Natural, any of the other products, none of them work like turpentine. And if you want your piece to come out and not have issues, you want to use turpentine. A lot of people are allergic to it, so whenever I'm teaching, I keep it covered. I have a little container that I got off of Amazon, and it has a lid to it that sets on it. It fastens down and it seals and it doesn't spill. And I think it's just brush cleaner holder in Amazon in their art section. So that's very handy. I use that a lot. And the medium that I'm using, mix this paint with. This is my paint. I mixed it up last night. You can see it's fairly heavy. The medium I'm using is turpentine. And I've mixed this paint with silkscreen oil. And basically, silkscreen oil has a lot of pine oil in it. You can smell it when you open it. I have not found another product that works like this. Um, it dries very quickly, but it's soft. It's not like MX54. It dries very quickly, but it'll come off if you touch it. And if you do that, then you need not to touch it after you made a dent in it, fire it, then you can come back and cover it. The thing about silk screen oil, it's very smooth. Do you see how smooth that is? And you can get a really nice covering with it. It dries very quickly, and so you can do other painting afterwards. Now, if you were to take this and use a heat gun or a hair dryer, it would dry faster, or you could stick it in the oven and it would dry very hard. Also, if you don't have silk screen, or you can use straight capeba. That will dry very hard and it works the same way. So this is a gray mixture. I had a bunch of old paints that were pinks and blues and greens, and they were colors I don't use, so I dumped them all together and made this gray. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to paint this background. And so we want it to be streaky. And so because I've resisted everything, I can just go right over it. And I'm not going to worry about showing marks on it. And from the sky, we are going from the top to the bottom. We're going to put the ground in after we get done with the sky. And to do that, we're going to go horizontal instead of vertical. So you can see it's already drying. If you want it, what you want to look at is you want it variegated. Do you see how it's light, medium, and dark? This is what you want. And the one thing about using this silk screen oil is you can keep coming back and blending it, and it softens and softens and softens. You can not over blend it, except for when it starts drying. Then what will happen? It will you'll start pulling your paint off. So that's the only bad thing. So now I'm just dragging this down. Every time you touch that brush on your paint, you're going to leave a mark. So if you'll reload your brush with paint, then you don't have those brush marks. Okay, so now I'm going to do the ground. I'm going to drag this down a little bit more here. So it comes in between the kids here. And you can see it's drying. Again, you'll probably want to be careful. It goes on very smooth and you can make it very thin, but you do not also want to build up a big chunk of color. If you do that, it probably would chip. I haven't had that problem, but it probably would. Right. So here it kind of started to dry, so I just came back with more paint and more medium. And so now I'm going to go horizontal to create the ground. And I'm going to go right over that water-based medium because that's dry now. And we want it to be muted in color. We don't want it to be bright because these colors are going to fire just like that. And if I go over it with this gray value, then it's going to mute them down and it's going to look more watercolor effect. I'll drag this sky down a little bit more here. Okay, this is drying very quickly, which is just what we want. And we're going to put some texture in this. Now I've created a mist that I use to do texturing. kind of makes it look like rain. It has alcohol, two kinds of alcohol, as denatured and isopropanol alcohol, and it has lavender oil in it. I've tried turpentine, that will work. I just like the way this works because it creates more texture and dries very quickly. Now, the other part of doing this, and this works exactly the same way with if I were to use Capeba instead of silkscreen oil to mix this gray value. And this is kind of a hard line here, so I'm just going to kind of, and the reason why is because it's drying up here. And so I'm just going to knock that down a little bit. And now, do you see my brush strokes here? I'm not going to worry about that because we're going to come back and spritz that with this mixture. If you want the formula for that, I can give it to you if I can remember where I put it. So, all right. So I'm going to let this dry just a little bit. All you have to do is kind of move it around a little bit. The drier it is, the more texture you get. And again, this is the two type denatured and isopropanol alcohol and lavender oil. The other thing about this silk screen oil, it's got a lot of pine oil in. I have no idea what else it has in it, but it is very strong. And if you have a tendency to get allergic to pine, you will not want to use it because it's very strong and it's very sticky. And it can be a mess. All right, so now I'm going to take here we go. All right, I'm going to take the spray bottle and I'm going to spritz up and let it fall on my piece. And the key is you want some big chunks and you want some small ones. Then after I'm completely finished painting this, I'll come back and sprinkle it with some glass frit, and that'll make it look like there's chunks of water laying around. Now I'm going to zoom this in very close so that you can see some of the movement here. Is it showing? There, the texture. It leaves little holes. It looks like it's raining. All right, so now I'm going to pull the resist off and we can start painting the children. And I just start at the top and start moving down towards the bottom. This very dark area here, that's going to fire red, and because of the gray that's on it, we're not going to worry about it being too dark there. I want it to be. Now you can probably see it a little better. Now I spritzed it some more, so it looks real. If you get some over here where you're going to paint your kids, don't worry about it because it's got oil in it and it's going to dry, or the alcohol is going to dry, and then the other is lavender oil, so that's not going to hurt your painting. So I'm going to clean the edges up here a little bit. I've touched it here, so I'm not going to try and fix that because if I do, it's going to show. And so I'm just going to leave it, and then when I come back, I can put another coat on and touch that up. Okay, so now we put all of that away because if you don't, you're going to get into it. So put it away. All your medium that you're using and get out your palette. So I'm going to get again, the medium that I used is Capeba lavender and clove, and it has a little mineral oil in it. So it's 8 parts Capeba, 2 lavender, 2 clove, and 2 mineral oil. So All right, now we're going to work on our children. So again, here's my palette that I use. I use this on everything that I paint. I use basic colors. I would encourage you all to find a palette that works best for your style of painting. And in other words, everybody seems to want to change. And when you're in a seminar, it's okay to work with the teacher's painting. But when you're at home, find a palette that works best. And basically, you want three values. Now, what you see on your palette, what it looks like, that's what it's going to look like when you paint. So if your palette is dirty and has lots of lint on it, then everything you put on that porcelain is going to be exactly the same way. So don't expect miracles to happen if you have a dirty palette. All right, so now I'm going to lay this down and get our piece out here. So we're going to start working on the babies, and if I can get it more focused here so that you have a better look at what's going on and better viewing option here. Okay. I should have an automatic focus on this, so it should, oh, here we go. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see better. There we go. All right, so let's start with the little boy. The little girl is the one that's coming in closest, so we'll start with her. And I'm using about a number 5 or 6 brush. The other part is when I load my brush, I find that in teaching, most of my students they're not painting wet enough. They don't have enough oil on their pieces, on their brush. So if you don't have an inkwell like this, you need to look and find one. There's not a lot of them left out there, but try and see if you can find one. You need the one that has a running board like this that's slanted so that you can work that oil up into your brush, and make sure that you have enough oil in your brush, because if you don't have enough, you're not going to get that paint off of your brush onto your porcelain. So that's what I found. You can see how wet my brush is by looking at it. It has a nice shine to it. The other part is when you're painting and you're working with your palette, whatever this looks like on your palette, that's the stroke that it's going to look like. So that is what's going to appear on your porcelain. So this will deter, and you need a white background so that you can see that. So I'm loading both sides of my brush. All right, so let's start with the little boy here and get him started. Put those brushes away because I don't want to. All right. So I'm going to start at the top and work down. Now I'm going to go ahead and put some texture in on this today so that you all can see. If I was doing this for myself, I would probably not do this in one fire, but I want you all to see that it can be done in one fire. So that's why we're doing this. We're painting the little boy's hood and the jacket. This is a very heavy jacket, so it's very bulky. And the good thing about painting this type of design is that you don't have to worry about having smooth brush strokes because we're going to put a lot of texture in this. So this is yellow brown again, because I don't use any other yellows because they can be very cannibalistic. And I'm bringing that all the way down. Now, right now, when I were to fire this right now, you would not be able to tell the separations between the arm and everything else that's going on in there. So we're going to go ahead and put some shading in that. So I'm using yellow brown, and my shading is going to be yellow brown too. So I'm going to go ahead and do the little girl's pants because I've got yellow in my brush. And she's got a little bit showing there. And that's it on this side. So you just see her pants there. The rest of this is her boots and her coat. So now my shading is going to be yellow brown too. And actually I'm going to mix just a small amount of antique green to that to make it muddy. So whenever you're using shading, you have to muddy that color. If I were to come in here with straight yellow brown has a little bit of green in it already, but I want it to be muddier. If you're using pure colors for shading, it's not going to happen because what happens is you're going to make the product darker. It's not going to go shadow. It's just going to become from a translucent color to an opaque color. All right, so now we're going to come in and put the shading on the arms. And again, I'm using yellow brown too with a little bit of antique. And what we're looking for in this is creating the folds in the coat and getting some depth. Anytime you're working on a flat surface, the only way we can create dimension is by shading our colors. So I'm using yellow brown too with a little antique green in it to make it muddy. And then I'm going to come back and pull out some highlights. And after I'm going to let this set for a little bit. If you can learn to let your paints rest, what happens is when you're painting, and if you look at your palette, you will see that in the morning, I will turn my paints over 2 or 3 times a day because all that oil pools to the bottom of your paint. And I mixed this up fresh last night, this palette. And if you were to look really close around this ruby, there's a ring of oil all that's seeped out. What happens is that oil pulls that paint down, the oil dissipates. And when that happens, all that good pigment color is laying right at the bottom of your palette. Right down here is where all that good pigment is laying right on top. So I flip my paint over. And the same thing happens here. If you'll let that rest for a little bit, don't touch it. What happens? The oil forces that paint to set next to your porcelain. And when you come back and start pulling out your highlights, you're pulling more oil than you are color. So I'm going to clean that yellow out, and now we're going to work on her coat. And as you see, I'm using the same brush. I'm just I'm not cleaning it. I'm not stripping it. I'm just swishing it in turpentine to get the color out of it. And now I'm using the same brush. So now I'm going to get into my pinks. This is soft rose. Your pink colors can get very gummy. So this is soft rose from Paula Collins. I don't know if you can still get it or not. I bought some from her. And it has very strong pigment. If you paint it heavy on your piece, it's very hot and garish. You've all seen pinks that they're just almost glaring at you. That's what happens with your medium value pinks. So what I do is I take that medium value pink and I mix it with my light value. This is Carmen pink from Freddie. I'm not sure if Jimmy still has that or not, but it is an iron base pink. And I mix that with my gold base, and that will give me a very pretty. Am I in the focus here? That'll give me a nice pink. So I'm going to shade this pink today with violet of iron. You can shade, and I'm going to show you a couple different ways to do this, and you can decide what you like. Anytime you're shading pinks, you need to shade it with another color to make it recede. Again, if you don't, it just becomes opaque and not translucent. So again, I'm blocking in the pink. I'm using the soft rose and carmine pink. Japanese pink is similar to that. So is the old shell pink. This is just one I got from Freddie years ago before they quit. And it's an iron base. It's lovely. It's a great color. All right. So now I'm just tapping that in. And I'm just going to come back and put some shadow in here. Now, I'm going to show you a couple different ways to shade this. You can shade this with blues, which I would use blue-green. So what you do is you shade with blue-green and pink mixed on your brush. Because when I shade, I always shade it with the color I painted first and add another to contaminate it. I'm going to show you a couple different ways to shade this, and you can decide what you like better. This is the blue-green, or the color that I have on my palette. It's called turquoise, but it's basically blue-green. It makes it look kind of muddy. And that's what you want. You want it to look muddy. And let me automatic focus here. And then we want, now I'm going to also shade with another color and see which one you like best. Now, this is the soft rose and the blue-green. And you might like this other color that I'm going to use. I'm going to do that on this side. Lots of times when I'm painting, I like to have a cool side and a warm side. And I do that quite a bit. I will take and use one side to have cool value, the other side to have warm value. It's just, creates more interest in your piece. And all right, so that's the left side. Now I'm going to clean my brush out and I'm going to shade. I'm going to load with my pink again. Always use that color you painted first. and then your second color to contaminate it. So I'm going to paint that first, and then I'm going to tell you what it is. This is soft rose and violet of iron, and you might like that better. This is strictly a personal thing. It kind of gives you a different feeling. It's not as muddy looking. Uh, it's softer. Violet of iron has, depending on whose violet of iron you're using, it'll have some may have some brown in it and some may have ruby in it. So, okay, again, I'm not doing anything more here. I'm just going to leave that, not going to touch it. I'm going to let it rest. And now I'm going to work on the boots. I'm going to get into blues. So I'm going to use, I'm going to mix. I found that the blues are becoming very much like rubies. They're becoming very gummy, and I don't know what's going on. So what I like to do is I like to combine a light value and a cool values, or a light value and a medium value. So I'm using royal blue mixed with some air blue. That gives me kind of a denim. Air blue has a lot of a lot of white in it, so it's not a pure color. Royal blue is very pure, and so it gives me a better disputed color. And you can see here, it's not pure, it's not real vibrant. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to shade that with a couple different colors. And that can either be midnight blue. It can be, I use a color called ocean blue. It's very similar to Frank Albrecht's midnight blue, blue black, something really dark. It's got a dark pink. The ocean blue that I have does not have black in it, but you can use some that does. It's strictly up to you. And as a matter of fact, if you want it to go darker, you can add a little black to it. Now, black is a dominant color, so that is going to overpower your other color that you're adding. So be very frugal with that and blend it very well, because wherever you put that black, it's going to stay. All right, that's their hand. This is her boots. All right, let's put her little boy's pants in here. I got too much yellow here, but that's okay. We can go right over it. And I'm going to come back and shade this blue again with a little bit of ocean blue. I might even pick up a little black with that because it has a tendency to get gummy on me. And I really don't know what's going on that's causing all that, but I've noticed it a lot lately. All right, so now you can see I haven't smoothed this out. I haven't worked on it. I'm just tapping in this color. So now I'm going to go ahead and paint the red boots. I'm using the same brush. I just took the turpentine and cleaned out the paint. And I'm using rich red, which is also a Freddy's color, and you couldn't get for a long time, but because they were out of it. But I found some, and I do believe that Jimmy has some too. So it's very much like blood red, except the pigment is more intense, and it just has it's more of a red color, and it's a beautiful color. It really is. All right, so now as you can see, this is very not smooth. It's very choppy. And it's supposed to kind of look like an oil painting. And do you see all the blotchiness here? If you have that on your painting at home and you don't like it, and you fired it. So next fire, you come in and you go over that painting with the exact same color, and it will knock all that down and you won't see all those brush strokes. So I've blocked all this in. I'm going to go and put the hands in. They're wearing kind of gloves, mittens here. So they're kind of a peachy color. And if you can make this skin tone or whatever, if you want it to look more like hands. So if you want it to be skin tone like hands, I'm using, you don't have to have portrait colors. I'm using yellow brown and my lightest value pink. And that's this one. And just a hint of yellow red. And there's your skin tone right there. So you can make your own. All right, so I'm going to come in and I'm going to block in the skin tone. You can see I can move this actually. The one that I painted with this silk screen oil. Okay, so I'm just blocking that in. I'm going to go ahead and do the scarf with chartreuse. And then I'm going to come back and shade that chartreuse with some antique green to get some depth in there. And again, I'm using antique green because I want it to be muddy. Wherever it's dark, I'm using the antique green. Okay, so I do this a lot with, I do this in everything I paint. So this step I'm going to show you after this reflection that's in the water of the boots, I'm going to come back and wash over that reflection of white with a little gray. Otherwise, it's going to look like it's part of the boot. And you see the silk screen oil, I can go right over that. It will, if you put a lot of pressure on it, you're going to pull the paint up. So now I'm going to come back. I have these wipeout tools and clean up. They used to sell these at Michael's and Hobby Lobby, but they quit. I think they're probably Chinese. I found an outlet where I can get them. I thought they were out of them, but I have some coming. So hopefully they send them to me. Anyway. All right, I'm cleaning up the white on the bottom of their boots, what I'm doing. And there's also a stripe at the top of the boot. So I'm putting that in. There's some hair on here. Just leave it, don't touch it, and that will fire out. If you get in there and start playing with it, you're going to move that oil on that piece, and that will fire. That's what leaves the mark on your piece. So now I'm taking a number 10 or 12 brush, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to airbrush over this paint. I do this on, this is what I was going to say. I do this on everything that I paint. And I'm not actually touching the paint, I'm moving over it. If I see a spot that needs to move a little bit, I'll get a little closer and drag it a little bit. This is something you just have to practice to work at. And the easiest way to do that is to take your brush and move the hairs on your arm like this. What happens is your brain records how close you can get to that without touching it. And it's a memory. Your muscles have memory. So if you have trouble doing this, then practice it on your arm. This is most important when you're painting flowers or portraits or anything that you need the colors to blend. So I'm softening this down. I want to move a little bit of this. Again, I have not pulled out any highlights. I'm going to come back and do that. When I haven't painted the stick yet. I did want to wait and paint that in after. This is a little stick that a little boy is holding. So I'm just going to I use yellow brown #2 and rich brown. I found that if you use either one of those separately, they're just not strong enough color. Rich brown is a little too deep, and yellow brown 2 is not deep enough. You could actually use turpentine. Whenever I use this brush, this scroller, I always use turpentine as my medium. It dries and I can get the texture that I need. All right, I'm come back and put a little texture in that stick. There's a handle that comes right there. Okay, so now let's come back and lift the highlights. When you start pulling highlights out of your piece, if I come back in here and pull the highlights with the same brush that I painted this in, I'm pulling out way too much. I'm basically defeating my purpose. So if you'll drop down a size and brush, I went from I believe this is a size 5. Oh, it's an 8. So and I'm working with a 4. So you can go to a 6 or a 4 to pull out your highlights. Then you're not pulling out all the color. You're only pulling out sections. So I want to come in and I'm going to pull a highlight out where I think that's going to create movement. And instead of thinking on my regular painting, instead of thinking highlights, if you will think in terms, where do I want to add more color on next fire? Where do I want to see movement? That will change your thinking as to the terminology you're using because your brain thinks of it in a different way. So I'm thinking in terms of where do I want to see movement and where, if I'm doing flowers or scene or fruit, where do I want to add another color tomorrow? Because if I come in here where it's really intense, I'm not going to be able to add color in that area. So I'm using, and you can see this paint because it's got a lot of Capeba. It's got 8 parts Capeba. It's setting up a little bit. And if you have a fan on or if it's humid like it is now, it's going to dry. And do not let it set very long because it's going to be to the point where you can't move it. And then you're just going to have to wipe it off, start all over. And then when I would come back on here on next fire, I would probably come in and just probably shade in the shadows. Again, second fire, you only work on detail, depth, and dimension. So what you're working on in second fire is adding shadows and detail. So I'd come in and shade a little bit in the shadows. And I would put, if I were doing any type of fruit or flowers, I'd be putting in shadowed leaves. So second fire is all about shadows. You're not going to repaint the whole thing. If you're repainting the whole thing, you didn't get enough color on first fire. Years ago, they did that. They wanted you to have multiple fires layering. What I have found is most importantly on first fire is texture if you have a piece that needs lots of texture, you have to get that in on first fire. You also have to have the lightest values. So first fire normally is all about putting in the lightest value of whatever color I'm working on. And then textured and light values. That's the most important. First fire, you're working in all pure colors. Second fire is nothing but mud. You're working in only muddy colors, because if I were to come in and use all pure colors again on second fire, it becomes too vibrant and I've got too much movement and I don't want that. So muddy colors on second fire. I'm adding a little more dark on her boots here to give it some more texture. And here on his boots, I'm going to use my wipeout tool and separate these two boots. Next fire, I would come in and shade this red with, I'm going to do a little bit, a little bit right now with Violet of Iron. You can see that already. I use violet. What you're doing is, and your palette's going to tell you what colors you're going to use. So in other words, first fire is your lightest value of the colors. Second fire is you're using a muddy value of that color, or your second and third value of that color. So your palette's going to give you all that information. All right, let's put some more highlights on the little girl's coat to get some more movement here. And it's kind of wrinkly, textured. I'm not going to smooth a lot of that, because if you do, you're losing that movement. And we want it to look like it's all crumpled up. And there's her hand right there. Okay, all right, let's work on the scarf a little bit here, and I think that's about it. And all right, that pretty much is completely finished. And let me see if I can zoom this back out so you can see it. And the texture. Well, it's right at an hour. How about that? So, questions. Does anybody have any questions they would like to ask? That will be completely done. Next fire, if I need to touch up the background, I'll add a little color to it, add some depth, maybe create a few more cast shadows down in through here, because I want it to be a little darker, a little more cast shadow behind him. I want this to be muted through here. There is some cast shadows behind him, underneath his bottom here and across his boot. There's some more blended some shadows here. I'd come in, use some gray values. I'd probably pick up a little bit of gray and add a little color to it of that, whatever is next to it, because your shadows have to reflect the color that's next to it. You can't have a pink flower giving off a blue, orange or yellow shadow. It has to give off a pink gray shadow. So I would either use gray and that color of pink, or I would use blue, green, and pink. Okay, questions.
If you would like to ask Jane a question, unmute yourself at this time.
Well, they're just full of questions today. Okay, try it. It's a lot of fun. You all should have the line drawing in the picture. And if you have any questions, my email's right there. You can send me an email or a text. So thank you for joining today.